Her companion, the one who cast the fireball, yelled. The casters one by one felt the amount of damage they were dealing through their intuition, and began to chime in with "it works, we're dealing damage," and other similar phrases. Skama. Every type of magical attack appears to be effective on that thing. Skama sighed in relief at the best news she had received all day. Perhaps they had a shot at victory after all. Understood. Now then, continue attacking. The opponent was still running towards them at a breakneck speed. She prayed that they could bring it down before it reached the gate. If they were to consider that this being had no resistances, then the amount of damage that it had already tanked should be proof that it was no common foe at all. I don't want to fight something like that in close quarters. As though to concur with Skama's thoughts, another wave of spells were sent out. Many zombies had already fallen at this point, yet the shield bearer pressed on. Most undead would have been vanquished after a few dozen spells. Skama felt a chill down her spine. It's stronger than expected. No, it's too strong, this thing. Can we really defeat it? The shield bearer wasn't the only enemy they had to be wary of. There was also the other one who was still waiting in place. Why it wasn't moving, they had no idea. Is it the Sorceress Kingdom's trump card? That's why there's only two. Or was it to say that this city with us included is weak enough that only two of them were required? Another chill was sent down her spine. What if the Sorceress Kingdom had received intel on every adventurer in the city, including Skama's 4 armaments, and had sent the exact number of troops to guarantee victory? And the troops in question were not the zombies, but rather the shield bearer. As if to disprove her worries as paranoia, Skama bit down on her lips and resisted the urge to yell, "Kill it faster." Everybody was already focused on that and were trying their best. What kind of an effect would take hold on their minds if she, the most powerful adventurer here, was to yell that? Never mind a neutral impact, it would probably drive down their morale. She had to resist her urges for now. Skama offered up a prayer to her god, the god of fire, yet it could not bring a smile to her face. The shield bearer was at the gate. It was now in the caster's blind spot, where they couldn't aim at it properly. Skama considered if she should jump off of the city walls and run. One look at the other, unmoving undead, killed that idea. If that other undead being was as fast as the shield bearer, it could easily catch up to her. It wasn't impossible for her to make it out alive. She had already used flight to scout out beyond the zombie army, and found nothing other than those 2 undead beings. So if they were to combine fly with floating board or draw the enemies into the city and slip out into chaos, it could work. As long as there weren't any other undead troops on standby, nothing could stop her escape. If they were to go with the latter plan and lure the enemy into the city, it would surely burden them all with a guilt that was much stronger than if they were to simply abandon the city. Perhaps a guilt that could cause a lifetime's worth of regrets. As Skama gnashed her teeth, she heard the loud boom from the city gate, as if a battering ram had just impacted with the gate. They were out of time. Skama made her choice. It's our turn. You guys keep your attention towards that unmoving undead and what's below the walls. I'll bait it into your line of sight. Once you could see it, cast your spells immediately. After a brief order to her teammates and detailed orders to the soldiers and the casters, Skama ran towards the stairs that led to the bottom of the city walls. Her companion, who still had his fly spell active, followed closely behind her. That thing has an unbelievable level of durability, but it should have taken quite a bit of damage already. But is that true? This isn't too optimistic of a deduction, is it? But Skama's expression was that of a bitter smile. An undead who had already taken so many spell attacks. I wouldn't want to buy time for a spell to finish it off by taking its attacks. But she had to do so to even have a chance at surviving this ordeal. The city gate was a simple, single giant door made out of logs. It would have been a point of pride for a fishing village, but not so given the current situation. A hit from a battering ram would have probably blown out the hinges. Because they could not replace it with something that was sturdier given the amount of time they had, they could only reinforce it with wooden planks and seal the frame. The thickness of the gate was about twice what it used to be. From the other end of such a door, the booms of repeated impacts reverberated. What kind of power is this? With a crack, a part of the wood plank reinforcements began to break down. There was a gap between the impacts. Perhaps the shield bearer was backing up to get a running start before bashing into the gate again. What should we do? Lightning could hit it through the gate. Should we do that? Doors like this were resistant to lightning-based attacks, but that did not mean that it would not take damage from such spells at all. The potential damage such a spell could do to the door had to be compared to what it could do to the undead being. The benefits of casting lightning now or to save the mana for other spells after the shield bearer had broken through the gate had to be considered too. No, consideration wasn't necessary. They shouldn't be trying to face the enemy head-on, but to deal as much damage to it right now as they could. Skama nodded her head, and her companion immediately initiated his cast. Lightning. An arc of lightning shot out and went through the door, surely dealing some damage to the shield bearer. Oh, whoa. Whether it was becoming irritated or not, the undead began roaring loud enough for its sounds to pierce through the gate. The roar had enough determination behind it to make one forget to breathe. A streak of sweat flowed down Skama's face. No shout-based ability was used, but the roar could still make one's body tremble all over, so this must be from the difference in their power alone. Her subconscious had understood the difference in power between them. Not good, this is not good at all. It's no longer a question of whether we could win or not. If the Sorceress King could dominate this kind of undead, it makes sense. After all, he's a monster who could kill over 100,000 people at once. It was hard to imagine how one could control multiple undead of this level. Perhaps this undead was the Sorceress Kingdom's trump card. Was this city worth that kind of investment? Why was she in such a terrible city in the first place? Skama lamented over her poor luck. Boom. Another loud noise rang through. Multiple reinforced logs had snapped already. Lightning. Another streak of lightning shone, leaving behind a white afterimage, yet the sound of the repeated impacts failed to cease. The only thing that changed was the door. The logs had been snapped in half, the reinforcing planks were blown away, and only the twisted nails of the hinges remained on the frame. That's enough with the spell attacks. Could you buff me instead? Skama dodged the wooden splinters as best as she could while also moving backwards. She was receiving divine and arcane buffs from both of her companions. They used the first-tier anti-evil protection spell, the second-tier lesser strength and lesser dexterity spells, the third-tier haste spell, and more. Compared to spells for countering special abilities, more spells were cast on her to heighten her body's capabilities. The gate finally gave way after they had finished buffing and crashed onto the ground with a loud noise. In the slowly settling dust cloud that was just kicked up, a pair of bright red eyes appeared. Unbearable fear spread through her entire body upon receiving the gaze of those ferocious eyes. Her teeth clattered and her hands quivered. To hide this fact from the others, she had to suppress it to the point of almost fainting. This level of terror could not be felt on top of the city walls. It was something you had to face this monster to experience. What am I looking at? Just a single one of them managed to knock down the reinforced wall. The Sorcerer King dominates this kind of undead. I say this from the bottom of my heart, we should avoid becoming enemies with the Sorcerer King the next time around. Skama replied to her companions after swallowing a load of saliva. Though she had already heard of how the Sorcerer King had destroyed an army of over 100,000 men, she didn't feel real tangible fear. What happened before her eyes, however, influenced her fear of the Sorcerer King, who had control over this undead being. She did not want to fight this undead at all. Honestly, she wanted to just run as far away as possible. But there was no way this life-despising undead in front of them would ever let them do that. In any case, their only hope of survival lay in doing something against this undead. The horrifying embodiment of death swept the dust away from them using its shield, stepped over the broken threshold, and moved towards them. They had finally breached the walls. Were the zombies too distracted by the people on the walls, or had their encirclement not extended to this part of the walls yet? The fact that the undead in front of them had scattered the zombies near the gate on its way here was lucky for them, but there was no doubt in their minds that their luck would run out soon. Skama held up her tomahawk. Judging from that undead's speed, she should consider herself to be within its direct range. After activating the ability of the axe, an ethereal copy of it appeared next to her. This was her weapon's ability, Doppel, which created a copy of itself to float at a distance that wasn't too close, nor too far away from the wielder. It could automatically strike an enemy with the same level of accuracy and speed as the wielder. This ethereal weapon could not be destroyed with brute force. To break it would require special weapon destruction abilities. As a result, it could even outlast Skama in a fight. Though this ability was without any real weaknesses, it could only deal half the damage the real weapon could. Oh whoa. The undead let out another roar that sent them trembling in fear. Was it cheering the fact that it was about to slaughter people? It raised its shield high above its own head, and smashed it down at the remains of the gate. The wooden shrapnel flew towards them with tremendous momentum, but Skama waved her weapon around to effortlessly deflect them. Her actions appeared to have drawn the aggression of the shield bearer, who moved to engage her. It readied its wave-bladed sword as it charged towards her with its shield. This is bad. Speaking of which, why is it still alive after taking so many spell attacks? Isn't this too unfair? It was a flat-out lie that she deflected the shrapnel effortlessly. She barely managed to do so with magical buffs. Everybody, slowly. The shield bearer charged towards them. The gap between them was closed in an instant, as though a wall had come barreling towards them, as though it was planning to use its shield to crush her to death.